gracious God. That we can come again into your presence, Heavenly Father. You carried us along, Heavenly Father, for 7 long days. And that we can come back now again, Heavenly Father. First of all, thanking you that we have this opportunity to come into your presence.
Yes, Lord.
Asking for forgiveness of our sins that we have committed, Lord.
Yes, Lord.
But we come into your presence, Lord, to lift you up. Magnify your name, Lord, and give you the praise for all that you've done.
Yes, Lord.
Despite our shortcomings, Lord, despite our failures, despite, Lord, that we said something to somebody that wasn't right. We did something that we weren't supposed to do.
Yes, Lord.
We didn't thank you one day, Lord, but we're so grateful that you saw that your grace is significant and your mercy was everlasting. We have this opportunity.
Yes, Lord.
And we thank you for that. We come and invite you in, Lord, to our worship service here at 174 Anacounty. We invite you in this morning, Heavenly Father, because we need you, Lord. We know we need you, Heavenly Father. Some come with broken spirits, Heavenly Father. Some come with broken hearts. Some come, Lord, because they want to worship you, because of what you've done. And because of who you are and what you're about to do, Lord. So we lift you up, Lord, and we magnify your name. As the psalmist said, we all come sing, Heavenly Father, unto your gracious and magnificent name, Lord. We magnify you, Lord. We lift you up. And all that we do in what in our kingdom, Heavenly Father, that you will receive the glory. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
glad that God doesn't just look past when I'm in a situation. His hand is on me. His hand is on me. Oh, God's hand. I'm grateful for His hand. Oh, His hand is on me. Oh, I thank God for His hand. His hand is on me. I'm grateful, yeah. Oh, I'm grateful, yeah. Won't you sing it with us? His hand. Oh, His hand. Oh, I'm grateful for His hand. His hand is on. Yeah, His hand is. Oh, I know it is. Yes, His hand. Oh, yeah. Oh, His hand. His hand. Oh, His hand. His hand is on me. I'm grateful. Hallelujah. I thank God for His hand. Yes, His hand. His hand is upon us today. Somebody say amen to this. Oh, we're grateful for the blessing of God. His hand that moves in the middle of our situation. And even though we know His hand is there, we every now and then have to call on His name. And that's the time we set aside now that we might come together and we might pray. Some like to draw close to the altar, and you should feel free to do so now at this time if you want to come to the altar. Some just want to stand where you are and hold hands, but either way, I would that you would prepare yourself now to hear from the Lord today. Well, we're going to call on Him, we're going to pray and ask Him to look upon us, but as we prepare, let's think about those things that we know God can do in our lives.
Yes, Lord. I pray for you. You pray for me.
And watch God.
And watch God change me.
I'll pray.
I'll pray for you.
You'll pray.
Pray for me.
And watch God.
Watch God change me.
I'll pray.
I'll pray for you.
And you'll pray.
Pray for me.
For me.
And watch God change me. I'll pray for you. You pray for me.
And watch God.
And watch God change me.
Come on, church, let's bow our heads now and let us pray. God, I'm grateful to you for we know that you are more than able to change our situations. And God, we're grateful you can change our situations because if we're honest with ourselves, we find ourselves in the midst of situations that need to be changed. God, some of us are dealing with financial situations, and Father, we know how pressing those situations can feel, and we know, God, how hard it can seem when money runs low and resources don't seem to be available. But we declare today that you are the God that has a cattle on 1,000 hills. You are the God that allows us to gain wealth. You are the God that is more than able to intervene in the midst of our financial situations. And God, because you are that God, we give you praise. Even when we don't see you moving, we know that you're moving on our behalf. When we don't know exactly how, we're trusting that you're going to do it for us. And God, in the midst of our financial situations, we cry out to you and we ask you, God, to remember us and don't let us fall. We ask you, God, to remember us and make us the head and not the tail. We ask you, God, to remember us and to lift us up, that we might be able not only just to have enough, but we might have more than enough for our needs. But God, we know that you'll supply all our needs. We know that as Jesus taught the disciples to pray, he taught them that you, God, would give us this day our daily bread. And we're asking, God, that you would give us what's necessary. We can give your name praise, that your children would not go begging, but instead your children will be able to testify. And even when I ran out, my God filled in the gap. Even when things were low, my God was able to restore me and to lift me up and to give me everything that I needed. God, I'm praying that you look upon our situations now. And yet, God, there's also some of us dealing with some health situations. And God, I'm asking that you remember us, God, and remember our frame. We are the dust, and every now and then our bodies don't act like we want them to act. And I'm praying, God, therefore, that you would be merciful. But God, I'm praying for your mercy because, to be honest, we haven't always treated our bodies right. We didn't always get the right amount of rest, didn't always eat the right things. But we're asking for your mercy today, God. And by your mercy, you look at our bodies and that you move on our behalf. Help every organ to work like it should. Help our minds to remain focused on you. Help our eyes to be able to see you moving on our behalf. Help our ears to be able to hear your voice. And most of all, God, we pray that you bless our tongues, that we can testify about our God to a world that needs to know that we serve a God who loves us, is able to intervene on our behalf. But God, some of us aren't facing a situation, but we're just uncertain about your will for our lives. So we're praying, God, that you would speak now, that your children would understand and know what you would have us to do. But God, it's hard when we don't know exactly what steps to take. It's hard when we don't know whether to turn to the left or to the right. But we're reminded of the promise that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. Order our steps today, God. Help us to go where you want us to go. Order our steps, God. Help us not to go where you don't want us to go. Order our steps, God. Take us near people that will be able to bless us and to whom we can be a blessing. Order our steps, God. Take us away from folks that are just draining us and are parasites upon our lives. Order our steps, God. We might be placed in the lives of people that need to know who you are. Order our steps, God. That we might be next to folks who can benefit from knowing a Savior like Jesus Christ. And I'm asking you to order our steps today. God, that we might give you praise, that we might be able to testify that our God spoke in the midst of our situation and showed us which way to go. But God, even though we're asking you all these things, we got to take a moment and understand and remind ourselves that even though we have needs, we serve a God that is worthy of praise. God, you're worthy of praise because you supplied our needs before. We praise you. We praise you, God. You're worthy of our praise because, well, minds go back to a time when we called on your name and you answered us. And because of this, we give you praise. We give you praise, God, because we know the patriarchs of long ago testified that we serve a God that was able to bring a people out of slavery in Egypt. We serve a God that was able to bring a people over a sea on dry land. We serve a God that was able to bring his people back from captivity in Babylon. We serve a God who sent a Savior to save the world. And we're grateful to you, God, for who you are. We praise you. But all those stories from long ago, though they're wonderful to us, we got to praise you for what you did in our lives. We remember just last week when it looked like things weren't going our way, that you intervened and spoke a word in our situation. And you helped us, God, in the time of our need. Just last night, somebody was concerned, but you made a way out of no way. And we're grateful to you, God, for what you've already done. We praise you, God, for you are worthy of our praise. We praise you, God, because you are the only wise God. We praise you, God, because you've given us a name that is above every name. And that name of Jesus the Christ, we call on his name and he answers us. We praise you, God. Father, we give you glory today. And all the saints of God join and said amen.
I want to say thank you to Victor and Lorraine for visiting with us this morning. They are guests of Derek Young Sr. I understand that's why Derek looks so good, because he's Derek's barber. Oh, and pastors too. Okay, pastors too. And also, I've seen you, Leon. Yeah. So when it's good to see Leon and Christine Harris. So the announcements, just a reminder that this afternoon starts Sunday Fellowship at Friendship Baptist Church in Santa Barbara. And just a reminder too, prayer service on Wednesdays at 6:30 and our Bible study with Reverend Ananias on Wednesday. And reminders, this Saturday, the 23rd, is the Women's Ministry. And next Sunday, we're going to be celebrating with Greater Hope Baptist Church. We're going to pick the 53rd anniversary, and Pastor Graham is the speaker. And it's coming back, 5th Sunday, March the 31st, is Friend and Family Day. And so we're going to have live refreshments for the after service. So enjoy your week. It was warm. It was warm yesterday and today, so I'll see you next week.
Amen. Church, amen. Amen. Church, amen again. Amen. We're grateful to God. Come on, give God one more hand of praise. We're grateful to Him. All these wonderful things going on in our ministry. And we thank God so much for all of our guests. And it's just such a pleasure to see you today. I wanted to emphasize a couple of announcements and give us an opportunity to celebrate them. The first is every time I love to celebrate because our women are doing some amazing things at our church. And the Virtuous and Victorious Women's Ministry meets again on Saturday. Let's give God some praise for the women. One more time. Amen. We're excited about that. In addition, our voices will be joining me next Sunday afternoon. We're going up to Greater Hope. We're going to be preaching in the afternoon service at 3:30 p.m. We're excited for your voices, and we're excited for all of you as well to get a chance to share. And in addition to that, I wanted to give a little more emphasis on the 5th Sunday. So 5th Sunday, we're going to do something I'm sure you may have done in the past, but the way I want us to do it, Olivet, is for our Family and Friends Day. The idea is to invite family and friends who would not normally come to church. That's the idea. That's the idea. Folks who wouldn't normally come. Now, the reason I say that is I don't want to make enemies of the other pastors in the city who will say all our members was at Olivet. And so it's nice. If folks already have a church home, that's good. You're not trying to draw them. But the idea is to invite folks who wouldn't normally come. And our idea is to share with them on the 5th Sunday. So I'm excited about it. I think God's going to do some amazing things as He continues to bless us and use us in a mighty way in this community. Amen? Amen. Now, in addition to that, I wanted to say a few words about our bulletin. So everybody, pick up your bulletin. Pick up your bulletin. I want to say a few words about our bulletin. First of all, when you look at it, doesn't it look nice? Doesn't it look nice? And then, you know, Sister Denise Bale is responsible for our bulletin. Let's give God some praise for her. The wonderful job that she does. She mixes it up throughout the year. So what I want to do is tell you about the bulletin. So when you open up the bulletin, the first thing you'll see is the worship service. You see that, and you see your announcements. But then when you flip the page, you're going to see some important things. And particularly for our guests, but also for our members, a reminder, our church mission is there. Our church vision, our vision is healing. Everybody say healing. Healing. That's our vision for this church, and our church core values are in your bulletin. So if you ever forget them, when you're wondering about them, they're all right there. In addition, there's prayer requests and the praise reports that are there on the page that follows. And this will remind you of how to pray throughout the week, church. We ought to be praying for each other, not just on Sunday morning, but we ought to be praying for each other throughout the week. And God may even lay it on your heart to reach out to one of your fellow members and just to talk to them a while and encourage them, because you don't always know what they're going through. So the idea is to encourage them, and this is what that's for, and also for your birthdays. And so God moves you to buy a gift, you can know what day to give that gift. Amen. Amen. So then next, on the pages that follows, we have very important information. We have our schedule of services, but it's not just the schedule of services. You'll see there, if you go down, you see Olivet Baptist. There's the church email and the church phone number. If you keep going down, you'll see Pastor Tim, and there's Pastor's email and Pastor's phone number. And if you want to follow me on Facebook, you can see me on Facebook as well. You want to message, inbox, whatever the case is, you'll see me there. And as a way of reminder, church, that some folks get upset with me. You say, you preach too fast, Pastor. I can't follow that stuff. Well, every week, I do a sermon summary on Facebook. Every week, Sunday evening, I put a summary of the sermon up, and then throughout the week, I drop in little pictures, images to remind you of key points in the sermon. So if you don't feel like you get it all, you know there's two ways you can do it. One, we don't have it in the bulletin, but you know we are live streaming. We're live streaming. Turn to your neighbor, tell your neighbor, you're live. Oh, yes, you are. You're live. That's my way of KATY-TV. God bless. Let's give God some praise for 5 hours. Let's push. Wonderful job today. You want to take us out on live stream. So if you didn't catch it, you can go back on the live stream on YouTube. But if you didn't get it that way, you can get the sermon summary. It's all in the bulletin. Tell your neighbor it's in the bulletin. Yeah, it's in the bulletin. And then you see for our guests, you have a welcome statement from us about our purpose, worship, the word, witness, and our vision. And so for our guests to get to know us a little better, all that's in the bulletin. And finally on the back, the most important part of the bulletin is the sermon notes. It's the sermon notes. So you can remember something through the week.
All right.
So when the devil gets on your track, you can go back to what was said. And when you get discouraged, you can go back to what was said, and it'll encourage you in the midst of being discouraged. So I would that you would take a look at your bulletin and spend a little time to look at the resources therein and use them to your advantage. Amen? Amen. So with that, I have a special announcement. I wanted to issue some congratulations to our Ventura County High School Basketball All-Star, which is none other than Derek Young, Jr. Come on, Derek, stand up. I had the pleasure of seeing the All-Star game on Friday night, and that was a wonderful All-Star game. They had a dunk contest and some other stuff, a three-point shooting contest, and of course, Ventura County West took Ventura County East to the woodshed on Friday night. That was all right with me. Because the Derek team took care of business. And not only did they take it to the woodshed, but our own Derek Young hit the last 8 points for the West. Not only did he hit the last 8 points, he had 2 3-pointers. He was shooting for me, looking like Steph Curry out there. And I was proud of him. We're so excited. Come on, let's give God some praise one more time. We're so excited about what God is doing in our young people. It's time now in church for our offering, and I'm excited about what God's going to do with us as we continue to give into this ministry, that the work of the Lord might go forward. There are 2 plates in the offering. The first is our ceramic plate, which is the traditional offering for whatever areas of the church are needed. And then there's our silver plate, which is for our members in particular, which is how we save up throughout the year for special celebrations throughout. So I'm grateful for this offering, and I would that you would be encouraged to give, that the ministry work would go forward. So our deacons are coming now, and I'll leave you in their hands and the ushers for our offering.
Bless those who gave. Heavenly Father, bless those that desire to give and do not. Jesus, uplift your Son, Jesus Christ, and in his name we pray. Amen.
Praise.
saints. Let's give God some praise. Appreciate you, and we're grateful to God for what He continues to do in this ministry and in our lives. But now it's time for us to hear the word of the Lord. And I would that you would stand as we will go to Acts chapter 4 today. Acts chapter 4. We're grateful to God for our guest, of course, Victor and fiancé. God bless you. It's good to see you here today. I'm very excited to hear Ernestine and Leon Harris are here. God bless you. Let's give God some praise for these members of ours that have come back. I'm grateful to God for them. We also thank God for our deacons and officers of this church. Mother Baylor, God bless you. Always a pleasure to see you in the house. All of my Heavenly Father's children, other guests of ours, and of course our First Lady. It's a pleasure to see you. In Acts chapter 4, we'll be coming today from verses 32 through 37 out of the New Living Translation of the Bible. Acts chapter 4, beginning at verse 32. When you find Acts 4:32, you'll find these words recorded. All the believers were united in heart and mind, and they felt that what they owned was not their own, so they shared everything they had. The apostles testified powerfully to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and God's great blessing was upon them all. There were no needy people among them, because those who own land or houses would sell them and bring the money to the apostles to give to those in need. For instance, there was Joseph, the one the apostles nicknamed Barnabas, which means son of encouragement. He was from the tribe of Levi and came from the island of Cyprus. He sold the field he owned and brought the money to the apostles. How about you help me preach today? Turn to your neighbor, tell him, say, neighbor, pastor's preaching on planned unit development. Amen. You better take your seats. We're going to talk today about planned unit development. Planned unit development. Planned unit development. My brothers and sisters, a planned unit development is a type of building development that happens in cities like our own great city of Ventura. This planned unit development is a design grouping of multiple land uses. Typically, there'll be housing and recreation, perhaps a commercial center or an industrial park, and all of these uses will be tied up in a single planned unit development. For example, relatively recently, the Working Artists Ventura development took place not too far from here to the west, located in Thompson and Ventura, which groups several land uses. It groups together 54 affordable housing units for local artists in the city. It also has 15 units for formerly homeless or currently low-income families, and it also has 13 luxury condominiums with a community room space, a studio, and a cafe. This Working Artists Ventura, known as WAVE, was designed to combine affordable housing with supporting local artists. And I'm glad about this example from WAVE because it reminds me of the Church of God. Because you may know that the Church of God is a planned unit development for God's kingdom. And this planned unit development includes multiple uses in a single development area. And these multiple uses are perhaps most aptly described in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, which describes the uses in this planned unit development. The way the New Living Translation explains it, starting in verse 7, is that a spiritual gift is given to each of us so we can help each other. That's the planned unit development, the uses, if you will, inside of this body of Jesus Christ. He goes on to describe that to one person, the Spirit gives the ability to give wise advice. We call that wisdom. To another, the same Spirit gives a message of special knowledge. That same Spirit gives great faith to another. And to someone else, the Spirit gives the gift of healing. He gives one person the power to perform miracles, and another the ability to prophesy. He gives someone else the ability to discern whether a message is from the Spirit of God or from another spirit. And he gives still another person the ability to speak in unknown languages, while another is given the ability to interpret what is being said. And it is the one and only Spirit who distributes all these gifts. And I'm amazed when I see the development of the kingdom of God, and I see that he adds in these different gifts of wisdom and knowledge and faith, and he adds in these gifts of healing and the performance of miracles and prophecy, and he adds in the discernment of spirits and speaking in tongues and also interpreting tongues. And I'm glad about the development because it tells me that the kingdom of God is a beautiful place. It is a desirable place. It is a place where God's Spirit reigns free and the needs of the people can all be met. But this planned unit development for God's kingdom, it requires funding, y'all, just like any other planned unit development. Somebody say it takes funding. Oh, yes, it does. It takes funding just like any other planned unit development. And guess what? We need the funding not just because of money, because we got to have people with which to perform these gifts of the Spirit. And these people, if they're going to perform these gifts of the Spirit, they got to have a place where they're going to perform it. If they're going to have a place, there's got to be some provisions in the place where we will perform these gifts of the Spirit. The principles are: how do we fund this planned unit? How do we fund it? How do we make sure that the gifts of the Spirit can reign in the kingdom of God? Well, in the text, we have some principles for how to fund this planned unit development. These principles come from the first century church, and they provide a model for how we ought to give. Can I teach a little while? Yeah, they provide a model for how we ought to give today. We give based on being felt and not being forced. We give based on being felt and not being forced. We give based on the grace from the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we give based on provisions from the prosperous. You gonna stay with me today? Okay, so let me start. We give in a way that is felt and not forced. Somebody say not forced. Verse 32 of the text. They felt what they owned was not their own. They felt what they owned was not their own. My brothers and sisters, bullying comes in many forms. And sadly, one of the forms of bullying comes in the church. If I'm honest about it, bullying often comes, especially on this subject of giving. When you go to churches all around the country, you'll see bullying taking place when it comes to giving. Preachers, ministers, deacons, and even members stand and bully. You ought to give this, and you ought to give that. And some even have an amount. And I have to tell you, your pastor can barely stay in the pulpit when I see that happen. And when they start saying, well, the preachers ought to at least give $50 each. And I say, you know what, no, we're bullying now. I said, that's bullying. Bullying. Some call this extrinsic motivation. You ought to give because I say you ought to give. But this is a modern conception. This is something we made up recently because it's clearly not based on the Word of God. For in the text we see that the giving was motivated intrinsically. These people didn't give because the apostles said they ought to give. Instead, they give because it was in their hearts. Instead of I give because you said so, they said I give because I said so. No matter what you have to say. When we think of giving as a matter of the head and the hand, we often think if I just convince you, then I'll move your hand. But the head considers and the hand contributes is one way you can do giving. But in the first century church, giving was a matter of the heart. The heart had compassion, and when the heart moved, then the people saw the need, and it moved their head, and it moved their hand, and that's why in other words, giving was felt, and it was not forced. And I would that we return to this same concept in the second millennium. Giving is not a matter of being shamed or even shammed into it. Giving is not a matter of being bullied or browbeat into it. Giving is felt, and it is not forced. Paul talked about giving a lot, and in 2 Corinthians chapter 8 verse 11, Paul put it like this: give in proportion to what you have. Whatever you give is acceptable as long as you give it eagerly, and give according to what you have and not what you don't have. So don't y'all give your rent money here, because then you're going to be put out and coming back to the church wondering what we're going to do to help you. You give what you have and not what you don't have. I'm just saying, we ought to give what we have. Sick of pulling in the church. We have to give what we have and not what we don't have. But in 2 Corinthians chapter 9 puts it this way: but I say, Paul says, he who sows sparingly shall also reap sparingly. You remember that? But he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Every man according as he purposed in his own heart, let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful gift. And guess what? When you give like that, our God is able to make all grace abound towards you, that you, having all sufficiency in all things, may abound to every good work. What happens is about making sure it's our heart that we give. Can I testify for a minute? Can I testify? So let me testify. So, you know, earlier this year, First Lady and I got a bit of a windfall we hadn't expected, and we talked about it a bit, and we decided to give, and our hearts were moved based on what's going on in this ministry, and we decided to give. And if you want to know how much to say, you got to go to business meeting. Yeah, you got to go to business meeting for that. But we gave. And when we gave, it was in January, and my wife and I talked, and we hadn't done our taxes yet. We hadn't done our taxes, and we weren't certain what was going to happen, because it was a difficult year for us last year. We had some income that was unusual, and we started a job, and I took a new job, and we weren't sure. You know, when you do that, your taxes get all messed up. But we saw when God gave us this gift, we said, you know what, we know the work of the ministry. Let's go ahead and give now. We could wait till April, but let's go ahead and give now. We'll deal with our taxes. We'll deal with that later on. I did the taxes last night just as a preliminary, because I was just curious about what God was going to do, and I wasn't sure. And when I did the taxes, I was astonished, because for the first time in First Lady's going to hop a lot. That's all right. Because for the first time in 15 years, the government owes us more than we owe them. I'm telling you, the Lord God, when you give, He's going to make sure you have what you need. Oh, see how we ain't never seen the sufficiency in all things, that you can abound and give to him. Somebody say amen. That's what giving from the heart will do. It'll change your financial situation. It'll open up doors you didn't know were open. It will cause sufficiency to come you didn't know was coming. It will cause the government to have to give you and you not to give them. When you give from your heart, I know that God will bless you for real. That's what God does, and that's the notion of giving being felt and not forced. Somebody say it's not forced. Oh, it's not forced. It's not forced. That's how giving works. But not only is giving not forced, but it's based on grace from the gospel. This giving is based on grace from the gospel. Grace from the gospel. Verse 33 of the text. The apostles testified powerfully to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and God's great blessing was upon them all. His blessing was upon them because they were focused on the resurrection of Jesus the Christ. Let me talk to you a while. GoFundMe. Y'all know GoFundMe, right? Y'all heard that? Yeah, it's a wonderful idea. And it's an interesting idea because GoFundMe is when people go public with the many stories of the disadvantaged in need of help. But my brothers and sisters, GoFundMe can lead to a difficult reality for people in need. And that difficult reality is known as donor fatigue. This is what happens when donors receive too many requests too often. You get to a point where you're tired now. And you get tired of the sob stories and the tear jerkers. You go on GoFundMe, there's another picture of some sad-looking child, some sad-looking dog or cat, God forbid, if you're into that sort of thing, or some sad-looking family, and they got a sad story about how things went sideways for them. And sometimes it can become fatigue. You can get to a point where you just have heard too many of these stories, and you're no longer willing to give. But the context of giving in the text is clear because the disciples were not teaching and preaching just another sob story. These disciples and apostles were preaching and teaching the capital S story, which is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And this gospel is worth supporting. This gospel is worth spending. This gospel is worth sharing because it is the power to save the world. We often talk about saving the world by taking straws out of our glasses in the restaurant and deciding that's not going to cause the world seas to become overcrowded with biodegradable hazards that will never degrade. We sometimes think saving the world has to do with the whales or some other endangered species, but the gospel of Jesus Christ is saving the world for real. Because the gospel is simply, for God so loved the world that even though they were sinful and unable to save themselves, he sent his only begotten Son to be the sacrifice the world can need. And all who believed on Jesus and his resurrection would not perish but would have everlasting, not just life on the earth, but everlasting life with our Father. And that gospel is literally what saves the world. It is worth our support. It's worth our spending. And it is worth our sharing. Can somebody say amen? Yeah. Oh, this gospel is worth our supporting because Peter and the apostles had a habit of preaching in places where they caused trouble. And in one particular instance, in Acts chapter 5, Peter and the apostles were preaching the gospel in Jerusalem, but the high priest and the council got upset and wanted to get rid of them. But I remember a Pharisee named Gamaliel who stood up and said these words as the council was trying to get rid of the disciples, trying to find a way to kill Peter and the apostles, trying to find a way to stop this gospel. Gamaliel said, listen, y'all, men of Israel, take care what you're planning to do to these men. My advice is this: leave them alone. Let them go. If they're planning and doing these things on their own, they will soon be overthrown. But if it is from God, you will not be able to overthrow them. And you may even find yourselves fighting against God himself. And this tells us that this gospel that we support, it's also worth our spending. Oh, it's worth our spending.
Yeah.
Oh, yes it is. It's worth our spending. I know it is. It's worth our spending. Somebody's thinking about the Powerball right now. It's worth our spending. The Powerball is not worth your spending, but this gospel is worth it. Oh, it's worth your spending. How do I know it's worth our spending? Jesus put it this way in Matthew 13. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that a man discovered hidden in a field. In his excitement, he hid the treasure back and sold everything he owned to get enough money to buy the field. You know, that had to be some serious treasure. And that's what the kingdom of heaven is like. It's worth everything. Somebody say it's worth everything. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant on the lookout for choice pearls. And when he discovered a pearl of great value, he sold everything he owned and bought it. Why is that? Because what Jesus is saying is the kingdom of heaven is eternal. And once you get exposed to something eternal, you realize that this world is passing away, and all of my status and all of my stature and all of my stuff in this world is going to stay behind when I leave out of here. So I got to grab hold to the kingdom of heaven, because that kingdom will never end. That kingdom will never perish. That kingdom will last forever. That kingdom is worth every time that I make. That kingdom is worth every sermon I preach. That kingdom is worth all of the sacrifices that I make in this world. When you realize that you're talking about that kingdom, it is worth your spending. Somebody say it's worth our spending. Oh, it's worth our spending. But not only is this kingdom worth our support and it's worth our spending, it is worth our sharing. And I'm glad that this gospel is worth sharing, because we often find that when we encounter people in the earth, so-called gurus or so-called wonderful, they teach what they call master classes now. They teach these things where supposedly these people have this knowledge that's so wonderful and so important, but notice they always charge you to go hear it. But what I love about this gospel that we preach, was there a cover at the door? No, there's no cover at the door, right? No, so we don't charge like that, right? It's not like that. But what is this gospel then? What's this gospel? It's worth sharing, so much so that we share it for free. We don't charge you to come in the door. We don't charge you to go on the live stream. Why not? Because this gospel is worth sharing. It's something that we have got to make sure gets out all around the world. This gospel is worth sharing. Now, somebody don't get it twisted. Somebody say, oh, so that means it's free. No, we didn't say it's free, but we said it's worth sharing. Now, we just didn't charge a cover on the door, right? But you had a door, which means there's expenses, right? Yeah, so don't get this thing twisted around, but we don't charge a cover charge. We're not going to go there. I know some churches do that. They say, all right, to come in it'll be $50, and to sit down it'll be $20. And, you know, we don't do it like that, right? You give based on what you choose to give. But the gospel is the emphasis. We are trying to get the gospel out to the world. Somebody say the gospel. I remember the importance of the gospel when I think about Paul and his letter to the church at Rome. You know, Paul had not been to Rome when he wrote that letter to the Roman church. He had not been there. He had not had a chance to visit. It's not a church that he founded. But Paul understood that at Rome, the believers were dealing with what we know about Rome, which is the notion of polytheism, the notion that they had gods they served, that they copied from the Greeks, that were mighty and powerful, and they judged their gods based on who they conquered and how strong they appeared to be. But yet those who believed in Jesus Christ were believing a Savior who sacrificed himself, who died on a cross and then was resurrected. And Paul realized that in Rome that was foolishness. In Rome they would have teased and heckled the Christians and said, what kind of God do you serve would die on a cross? What kind of God do you serve would sacrifice himself? And some of them even became ashamed to talk about Jesus because of how the Romans would treat them and talk to them. Your God ain't nothing. He died. Your God ain't nothing powerful. He gave himself up. But Paul you that the gospel was worth sharing. Put it like this in Romans 1. I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. For it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone who believes. It's so powerful that even though it was offered to the Jews first, this same gospel is available to the Greek as well. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. The just don't live by our own power. The just don't live by our own mind. The just don't live by our pocketbooks. The just live by faith in our God. This is a gospel that is worth sharing, y'all. It's worth sharing. Somebody say it's worth sharing. Oh, this is why we get so excited about the gospel of Jesus Christ. It was grace from the gospel that motivated the giving of the saints in the first century church. But not only was it this notion of the giving being felt and not forced, not only was it triggered by grace from the gospel, but this giving pattern in the first century church was based on provisions from the prosperous. Somebody say the prosperous. Verse 34 of the text. There were no needy people among them, because those who owned land or houses would sell them. Those who owned would sell them. My brothers and sisters, contrary to what you may have heard from others in the past, the church of Jesus Christ and the kingdom of God is not only for those who are poor. Right. But this kingdom of God is based on belief, not based on net worth. And so because of this, sometimes we can become just as much of a approach and problem from a critical standpoint, because we want to judge those who are wealthy the same way we think they judge those of us who are poor. But understand that the bar for entry into the kingdom is not based on your bank account, but it's based on your belief in Jesus Christ. And to be fair, I thank God for those who were prosperous in the first century church because they had extra resources. And just think about what this means. If nobody has extra resources, then nobody could generate income. And if there was a need, nobody could meet it. But because somebody had extra resources and they were willing to share, because somebody had additional money or land or houses and they were willing to sell them, then that is how the church ultimately was able to get the funding to move forward. It couldn't all just be nobody in the church had anything. There were also some believers who had some things, but they weren't arrogant about it. They weren't uppity about it. They said, you know what, I do have this house, but it seemed to me that rather than me just having this extra house, why don't I sell that thing? And we can use this money to make sure nobody in the building has to live anywhere but in a house. That's the kind of mindset that the first century believers had. And there was not really a problem with their finances. The problem, so to speak, the issue was really more about their faith. Someone say their faith. The point is, we cannot trust in wealth and riches. It's not that we run from it or we're scared to have it. We think we're going to go to hell if we get some money in the bank. The issue is not that. The issue is your faith. Somebody say your faith. You can't trust in riches. Of the three wealthiest Americans, none were born rich. Y'all know that, right? The three richest people in the United States right now today, none of them were born rich. Jeff Bezos started Amazon in his garage with a couple $1,000s, and he often talks about that. He said that was all his money. He wasn't sure whether he was going to starve or not into the next week, but he just had this thought that Amazon could become something. And with that little investment from his garage, on he went to become the wealthiest person in the United States. Although with that divorce, we're going to find out. But anyway, so now, next. is Bill Gates. Oh, I'm serious. We don't know what's going to happen after the divorce. Okay, so, but next we got, I'm sorry, I just inserted that. So Bill Gates dropped out of college to co-found Microsoft. And he co-founded with a buddy. And when he left college, I know because I went to the same college he went to. And I had the same advisor that he had, Dr. G. Sweetheart. And he talked to Bill and he said, Bill, why don't you stay in school? I think it'll be better for you. Bill said, no, I think this company we're going to found might be something. They didn't call it Microsoft at the first. They called it something else. And eventually it became Microsoft. And eventually he became what is now the second wealthiest person in the United States. And of course, Warren Buffett, who everybody talks about, the old fella, the sage of Omaha, he started investing at age 11. His dad was a congressman, but was not wealthy. And in those days, congressmen weren't wealthy like they are now. Back in the 1950s, they weren't wealthy. But he started investing at age 11. He filed his first tax return at age 13 because he made so much he had to pay taxes on what his investments had created. And from age 13, he just had a mind to understand investing. And he invested more and more and more. Next thing you know, he founds Berkshire Hathaway and is now the third wealthiest person in America. Clearly, family money does not guarantee wealth for the next generation. So we're saying wealthy people, you can only be wealthy based on your family. No, because I know some folks who had family money that went away real quick. Now I'm going to start with the one who went away the most, Bernie Madoff. That fella was worth $17 billion. But after his conviction, he was worth zero. And the Ponzi scheme came apart. And he said, how do you make $17 billion disappear? Ask Bernie Madoff, he'll tell you. He made that money disappear quick. And many wealthy people who had invested with him saw all their wealth also. You can't trust. Somebody say, don't trust in riches. No. I remember Elizabeth Holmes. She was the darling of the valley in San Francisco area. She created, so she said, a mechanism, a way to test blood that was fast and cheap and could be done quickly. And she founded a company that was worth $4.5 billion. But when they found out that the blood test didn't work, Elizabeth Holmes ended up going to prison, and all that $4.5 billion was gone overnight. Because you can't trust, somebody say you can't trust in riches. Now, we were talking about divorce earlier, so be careful. I would tell Bezos' wife to stay, because Patricia Kluge did it. She was the wife of another person who was caught, kind of like Jeff was, and she left and took $1 billion in her divorce settlement with $1 million a month in alimony. So within 2 years, Patricia Kluge was filing for bankruptcy. You ask the question, how could you lose $1 billion plus $1 million a month in 2 years? Ask Patricia, she'll tell you how. Because she found a way to spend up that money and make new debts, and now she's in the poorhouse. And I know her husband's saying, I know I messed up, but you should stay with me, baby. Because you can't trust in riches. Somebody say you can't trust riches. You cannot trust riches. You can't trust. No, those riches will flee from you quickly because you can't trust them. You got to trust in the God who gives you the power to get your wealth. You cannot trust in riches. Riches will go quickly. Jeremiah put it this way: blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord and whose hope the Lord is. For he shall be like a tree planted by the waters that spreads out her roots by the river, shall not see when he comes, but her leaf shall be green, and shall not have to worry in the year of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit just because the seasons change a little bit. What you find Jeremiah saying is trust the Lord and don't trust so much in your money. There's no issue with being prosperous, y'all. The issue is with our praise. And I'm glad about it because this thing about the praise that we give is an important reflection of the God that we serve. Somebody's wondering, what do you mean the God we serve? Well, here's how it works. The thing you praise, that's your God. The thing you praise, that's it. So when we say the God we serve, I always have a question mark in my mind because I'm going to watch you a while and say, okay, let's see what God you're serving. Because the thing that gets your praise, that is your God. And I caution saints is don't praise the gift, more than you praise the giver. What happens, y'all? We get excited about the gift. I don't care if the gift was a person that God allowed you to marry. I don't care if the gift was a child that God allowed you to have. I don't care if the gift was a job that you were able to secure. I don't care if the gift was a windfall, inheritance, or money that you were able to put your hands on. Don't praise the gift more than you praise the one who gave it to you. I know that's true. Well, Jesus told a parable. He told it like this. He said a rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. And he said to himself, what shall I do? I don't have room for all my crops. Then he said, this is Luke 12:18. Then he said, I know I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And I'll sit back and say to myself, self, take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But in the parable, God says to him, you fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you work for? And Jesus said a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. Why is that? Because God's the one who gave you the wealth. And if all you can do is get excited about the gift and miss the giver, then guess what? When we all got to leave this plane and we got to see that giver face to face, the question's going to be, did you love me or did you love the stuff I gave you? Did you love me or did you love the things that you experienced? Did you love me or did you love what you thought I could do for you? We got to make sure we are in love with the Lord God and not in love with His house. And we got to realize not only is the issue not with our riches, but our issue is with our decision to repent and follow the Lord. Not only is our issue not with our finances, the issue is with our faith. Not only is the issue not in being prosperous, the issue is with our praise. But I got to close here because I didn't know it was that late. So when I close now, I got to close up on this notion of it's not about your wealth, it is about your worship. It's about your worship, because we cannot worship God and also worship gain. You're going to love God or you're going to love gain, but you can't worship them both. You cannot worship the Creator and also worship the coin. You're either going to love your Creator or you're going to love the coin, but you cannot worship them both. You cannot worship your Maker and also worship money. You got to make up your mind which one you're going to love, because your Maker might take away your money sometimes. So if you're in love with your money and all you got is your love for money, what will you do with your Maker when your money runs low? I wish somebody would decide, I'm going to love my Maker and not love that money so much. Jesus put it this way, no one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You're going to be devoted to one and you'll despise the other. You cannot serve God and also be enslaved to money. I know we get happy when money comes our way, but I wish we decide in our minds that we're going to worship our God. And no matter what He does with our money, we're going to keep trusting Him. When you trust God, He'll sometimes see if you can live through not having much money. And being where I'm from, my family will encourage me. They'll say, Pastor, you know you didn't always have. You know there were times when you had to pay that bill a little slow. You know there were times when you had to let that thing flow to the next one. So don't get excited when you can pay a bill 1 month in advance. It's still God that gives you the power to be able to pay the bill at all. So we don't get excited just because there's money. Because I realize that money can come and money can go. But the God we serve, He's able to provide for us. Even when there's no money, He's able to give to us. Even when their bank account's low, He's able to make sure we don't miss any needs. Even though we look to God for money, I can confess that every time we moved in the states we lived. Didn't bring much money with us, but always had a roof over our heads. Didn't bring much with us, but always had a way to get around. Didn't bring much with us, but God always made a way. So I'm glad that God is bigger than our money. I'm glad He's bigger than our bank accounts. Oh, I'm glad He's bigger than all our financial situations because we serve a God who loves us. We serve a God who's able to provide for us. So I'm not going to worship my money, not going to worship my finances, but I'm going to worship the Lord God of heaven because He's a worthy God, because He's a providing God. I'm going to worship my God in heaven. I'm not going to worship what's in the bank today, because I live enough life to know that what's in the bank today can be gone tomorrow. But I'm going to worship the God that is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. He's never left me, never forgot me, and I'm going to worship, I'm going to serve the God of heaven. He's worthy of our worship. He's worthy of our praise. He's worthy of our faith. He's worthy of our trust, and He will always provide. Somebody say, yes, He will. Yes, He will. He'll always provide. Always provide. Always provide. Hallelujah. He'll always. Yes, He'll always provide for us. That's why we serve Him. That's why we worship Him. That's why we call on Him. That's why we praise Him. Because He will always provide. Somebody say He'll always provide. He will always provide for us. This is the blessed message today. That our giving is a planned unit development. God has placed each of us here to contribute to His kingdom. Somebody saying, well, Pastor, I don't think I can contribute much. Don't you say that, because God has given you a gift He didn't give the rest of us. He's given you life experience we don't have. And so that's why we can reach the world. Because everybody can relate to somebody who knows the Lord. Everybody can relate to somebody. Somebody said, Pastor, you don't know my background. You don't know my kids. You know Paul was in jail a lot, y'all. Y'all know that? Oh, yes, he was. Paul was in jail a lot. A lot. In fact, so much so he had to tell Timothy, stop being ashamed of my record. He said, I know I got a record. He said, but I got that record preaching the gospel. So stop being ashamed of my bonds. Ashamed because they locked me up again. Because the Lord we serve is able to use us even with the record. Somebody ought to give God some glory. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So when you look at it, you realize that ultimately the blessing is in our belief in the Savior and not in our bank accounts, not in our finances. That's why we give, because we're trusting Him and not ourselves. Come on, everybody, give God some praise. Everybody, please stand now. I'm going to ask our deacons to come. I've held y'all long enough. This is a time where we invite you to respond to this Word of God. How would you respond? Well, there's three ways you can respond. One way is if you've never been baptized, you've never publicly pronounced your faith in Jesus Christ. This is the time that you would come forward. We would talk a while and come to some conclusion. And then there may be some who have seen us, you've been our guests, and now you want to join with us. You want to do more than just spectate. You want to join in. We invite you to come forward as well. And then there may be others who just want to rededicate, recommit yourself to Christ, recommit yourself to this ministry. If any of those three describes you, I invite you to come forward now. I invite you to talk to these brethren and we'll come to a conclusion together. I invite you to come now. I'll say yes.
I'll say yes, Lord, yes, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Lord, yes,
respond to the word of God. I'll say yes, oh yes, to your will and your will. One say yes today. I'll say yes, oh yes, I will trust you and obey. When your spirit speaks to me, when my whole world out of you, and my answer will be yes. Amen. You may be seated. Come on, let's give God some praise in the building one more time. Let's let Him know how much we are excited about this word of God, and we're excited about what He continues to do in this ministry. And realizing I just asked you to sit down, I feel funny asking you to stand right back up. I got to start off for a few seconds. So we're grateful to all of you for coming today. We're so glad that God has blessed us to share. And if you're available, we would that you would come on up with us as we're going today. Where are we going? We're going to Greater Hope today. Oh, Murray said, yeah, we're going up Murray today. No, I'm sorry, we're going Friendship. Greater Hope is next week. Thank you. Oh, we're going Friendship. Still Santa Barbara. Okay, so that's good. So we're going to Santa Barbara. We're going to share with Friendship. If you need a ride, let us know. We'll get you up there and get you back. We're excited to have a chance to share today with Pastor Murray, and we look forward to what God will do with us there. Amen? And so now, it's been long enough, so now I ask everybody please stand again. I'm going to go to the back of First Lady so I can catch y'all. You won't get to the door before I do, so we're going down. Come on, First Lady, let's go. Grateful for this word of God, this reminder about giving. Oh, we confess sometimes we got more excited about the gift than we got excited about you. God, we're asking you to remind us of our love for you, because you're the giver of the gift, and the purpose of the gift is to point us back to you. Now we're asking that you use us mightily, that we would give willingly, that we would give from the heart. We would not feel forced, but instead we would give as you bless us and prosper us. That we can testify that you gave us back more than we could ever have given to you. Now I pray the grace of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the sweet communion of His Holy Spirit, may they rest, rule, and abide with us now, henceforth, and forevermore. And all the people of God said amen. Amen. And God bless you. We'll see you in the back.